thoughts, opinions, and general overall shades thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. That's right. It is Friday, March 28th. And today is a National Triglycerides Day, you guys. You with me, Rico? You here? I saw you just pop in. Okay. All right. Well, it's also National Black Forest Cake Day today. National Something on a Stick Day, and National Weed Appreciation Day, you guys. Can you believe that? It's National Weed Appreciation Day. Look at that. That is pretty. I wonder what kind of weed they're actually talking about, because I'm willing to bet that they're not actually talking about the kind of weed that we're talking about. But nonetheless. Are you there? Is he there? Okay, I guess he's not there. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website at www.highat9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. And so Rico is not here yet. I don't see him, but I do see Dr. TallyRand and I do see Dr. Mark. All right, sweet. Well, Dr. T. Oh, Jenny, you're there too, huh? Interesting. Mm-hmm. Jenny's there today too. All right, well, we are going to kick this thing off then today with Dr. Jean TallyRand. He's the founder of the CESC as well as Medican, and is the man that has been writing recommendations since the turn of the century. He probably has more data on cannabis patients than probably anyone that could possibly. Weed maps, you know what I mean? That's right, it is none other than Dr. Jean TallyRand.
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, I run circles around weed maps.
I figured, yeah. That's what I'm talking about right there.
And how are you this morning?
Amazing, man. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, everyone.
Yeah. It's the last Friday of March.
Absolutely. I can't wait for spring.
Yeah, baby. Well, the spring started earlier this week. It was the official first day of spring earlier this week on the 20th.
Right. And my kid's on spring break, so that's
oh man, that sounds fun.
That's and my story today is about my kid. So let me jump into it.
Oh, sweet.
So I have a 14-year-old son. His name is Alex. We live in San Francisco. And Alex is regularly exposed to cannabis use. We do live in San Francisco. He has not tried it yet, but I think he will soon. So we've spoken about it before. He understands that people use cannabis medicinally. He's seen cannabis in movies and how it has it was a sign of rebellion back in the day. We saw the Bob Marley movie and how the Rastas used cannabis for spirituality. So I looked in to see if anyone was doing research on cannabis use among teenagers, and I found this article recently published in the International Journal of Drug Policy. The title is "Harm Reduction Isn't Enough: Introducing the Concept of Mindful Consumption and Beneficial Maximization," by Daniel Baer. So Daniel Baer is a director at the Humber College Center for Social Innovation and Drug Policy in Toronto, Canada. So in this article, Professor Baer writes that harm reduction is an old idea and is not appropriate for cannabis use. Since the early 1980s, harm reduction was successfully used to save lives. The idea was intended for people who use opioids, where replacement with less harmful drugs like methadone would prevent opioid overdoses, or needle exchanges would preventing HIV transmission, were very successful. But overdosing on cannabis is not deadly. There's no viruses transmitted using cannabis. So cannabis is relatively safe and enjoyable. It's not about harm reduction. There's actually enjoyment there. So many people enjoy using cannabis, writes the professor. In fact, cannabis is the most widely used drug with an estimated 219 million consumers worldwide. However, enjoyment is not usually discussed in debates about drug policy. Even progressive approaches, such as harm reduction, tend to begin discussing drugs consumption by focusing on the potential negative outcomes associated with substance use. Rather than focus on the negative, we should provide information on how to consume safely and maximize the benefits people experience when consuming cannabis, while also avoiding the potential harms of consumption. The professor suggests that using this approach may successfully engage with young people who are just starting to use cannabis. The departure from harms-focused practices is where mindful consumption and benefit maximization become relevant. Mindful consumption involves the intentional and thoughtful use of substances. On the other hand, benefit maximization seeks to enhance the positive effects of substance use, like its therapeutic potential or pleasure enjoyment. When coupled together, mindful consumption and benefit maximization enables individuals to make informed choices that not only enhance their safety, but also maximize the enjoyment or beneficial use of the substance. So how does it work? A student asked the professor if he thought these edibles his friends had purchased were safe to consume, given the high amount of THC listed on the project, on the package. So the package listed 4 pieces of Buddha Boys candy with 500 milligrams of THC in each piece. The photos available in LinkedIn. He was also confused about whether the gummies the candy that he just purchased were legal or not. So the professor and the student briefly talked about cannabis dosing via the classic start low, go slow approach, potential issue with non-regulated cannabis, potential problems with taking a large dose. Mostly they talked about what he and his friends wanted out of the experience and how they should adapt the manner and amount of consuming to fit their goal or intentions with using the candy. They talked about planning ahead before consuming the edible, including things like how they were going to get home, and did they realize how long edibles can last. Before taking the edible, they also talked about why they wanted to change their state of consciousness with the drug. There was no stigma, no shaming, and no scare tactics. So thanks to Professor Baer, I will try this approach to talk with Alex about the basics, THC, CBD, and the difference between inhaling and ingesting. And I'm mostly interested in the discussion with him about about consciousness and what it means to him when it changes. I'm not sure how that will go. I'll let you know. Either way, there will be no stigma, no shame, and no scare tactics. Have you talked about cannabis with a young first-time user? Should you? What would you say? This is Dr. Jean TallyRand with High at 9 News.
Man, Dr. T, this is super interesting. I find it very interesting, especially the fact that it seems that the definition for harm reduction has changed dramatically over the decades. Because I remember when I was first in San Francisco, cannabis was part of a harm reduction type of platform because it was way better if we had people smoking cannabis than smoking crack or smoking heroin or anything else like that. And now it seems as though that is all switched, where they're giving out crack pipes at harm reduction centers.
No, not giving out crack pipes, but it definitely has changed where it's a more positive look at using a substance rather than a negative look. This is not about one harm replacing another, which is what harm reduction is about. It's about because cannabis is not harmful. It's about looking at cannabis as a positive thing, and what are the good things you're getting out of this? What are the benefits?
Tell that to Project Sam that cannabis isn't harmful, Dr. T.
Right. Well, the data is the data. Sorry, Project Sam.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, shout out to Kevin Sabet.
We need to bring him into this discussion.
Oh, that would be. I would love to do that, bro. That would be so awesome. I would love to have Kevin Sabet on the show.
I wonder if he has a teenage kid that's potentially about to use cannabis. Or Rico, what would you do when your daughter gets to that age?
I would ask her. I would ask questions. So I'd be like, what do you plan on using it for? Why do you have the need to use it? And what are you smoking?
Can I have some?
Jenny has.
No, I think it's more about. I think a lot of folks. Something I've learned as I've gotten older, and something I've learned. Like a lot in just like coaching sales and learning sales as I've grown as a salesperson over the last 25, almost 30 years now. It's not so much about like conversations are a lot more productive when you ask better questions, right? To get to the root of why people make decisions rather than scolding them or trying to push them into where you want them to go. Find out where they are now and what got them there, and then expand upon that. And I'm trying to introduce that approach into my personal relationships too, and they become a lot more fruitful along the way. Just taking that approach. I'm trying to inject that into my parenting too. Like even now, if she fucks up and just like tears up some shit in the house, like ask her like, why did you do that? Like what was going through your head? And you'd be surprised at the reaction you get rather than like, don't do that. I told you not to do that. Did I?
Right.
And then that just pushes them into lying because she'll be 5 in 2 weeks and her finesse game is getting stronger. It's getting stronger by the day. And I know I was really, really, really good at lying when I was young. And I know she has those genes in her. So rather than using them as a reactionary tactic, I'd rather her use her problem solving and just critical thinking skills rather than just using something to get over on people to satisfy whatever they want to hear right now. I think it's a conversation that we're all going to have at some point with people that we love, whether it's kids, our own kids or somebody else's kids. And that's the approach that I choose to take. I would recommend it.
Now,
a lot more beneficial for me.
Now, Jenny Beth has a son much closer to the age of having those types of discussions with. What do you have to say about this, Jenny Beth?
I mean, Parker he's 12, will be 13 Christmas Day. So we're getting into that hormonal, oh boy, time. So we're in fact, his girlfriend found me on Instagram yesterday, which was weird. She got a quick little block. Yeah, all of a sudden there's a comment on my son's picture. That's my boyfriend. Oh boy.
Oh man.
Yeah, I'm gonna come through that phone. So, I think that I just want to instill in him, like, I want him to talk to me about everything. Like, we have conversations where, like, maybe on the other side of the ball, like his grandparents or whatever are yelling at him. I'm like, just, dude, I just want you to talk to me so that we know what's going on. I don't think that Parker, he's a huge athlete, so he's very, very, very focused on football. Like, my kid's doing 350 push-ups a day, stuff like that. So I
He's on my
don't
level,
see him.
getting it.
He's beyond you. I don't
Hey.
see him, looking to fall into that group, and I definitely was at that age. So I'm just. It's about having conversations. Your kids feeling comfortable having those conversations with you, and just staying involved in who the friends are and what's going on. So, like, because 2,000 milligrams in a candy bar is a metric shit ton. So I definitely don't want him biting off a 500 milligram piece of chocolate and being comatose for maybe a couple of days. So we'll see.
And Dr. Mark, I mean, you have a son. You ultimately had these kind of conversations, and your son is currently in the cannabis space right now.
Well, I've raised 2 children. We've through this period of adult or to the adult world, right? So my kids they're not kids anymore, right? Yeah, Jake is 20 and Sophie is 23. They're both cannabis users. They grew up in a household where my wife and I were both cannabis users. So it's no surprise that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And when we were going through those adolescent years, kind of like the years that Dr. TallyRand and Jenny are talking about, we asked others, like, what do you guys do? Like, how do you use around your kids, and is there some kind of like magic age when it's okay to kind of like condone their use as users? And so it had a variety of different inputs from different parents, and some parents were always like, this is what we do, this is not what you do. I thought was pretty hypocritical. We chose again to give our kids safe place that they can consume, because if you don't let them consume, now they're going to be out in the neighborhoods and out elsewhere and probably going to get in trouble. It's always a dicey thing when the kids are underage to know that they're consuming, but if they're consuming in the comfort and safety of their own home, it's probably a better situation. Having to consume elsewhere where they can basically get in trouble or wreck their car or something like that. But it's definitely different than when I grew up. I grew up in a non-cannabis smoking household, so I certainly had to keep it on the down low for many years. And I think when my dad first caught me with like a bag of weed in my jeans pocket, I got the lecture from him, because he knew this Hispanic guy in the army that just smoked weed and didn't do anything all day. So right away I was going to be that guy, right? I was going to be the one negative guy that he knew that just was kind of like this Chicano guy who would smoke weed and just basically sit around all day and not do anything. But, after getting a PhD in chemistry and marrying my lovely wife and bringing 2 grandchildren into the family and having a very successful career as a, scientist, I think they can say, hey, maybe we were wrong about that. Maybe weed's not so bad. So in terms of harm reduction, I mean, I think Dr. T would agree that, if you take cannabis away from your children, you're going to be basically pushing them towards other drugs, real drugs. It is a very scary situation when these kids are taking benzodiazepines and crushing them up into lines and snorting them. That's not the way they should be administered.
Right.
And, I'd rather have my kids smoking weed than taking pills or than consuming alcohol. And what I find now that we're on the other side of that my kids are both adults now, is that they don't have substance abuse problems. You know, they don't rely on pills. They don't really, I mean, they drink alcohol socially, but it's not like with a lot of people who are sort of pushed towards alcoholism. You know, harm reduction in your children. You don't ever want to see your children overdose. You don't ever want to see your children drunk behind the wheel of a vehicle and get into an accident where someone gets killed or hurt. So harm reduction to me would say that cannabis is probably the safest option out there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Fair enough. I think we would all agree on that. The cannabis is the safest option. And even my last story of today touches on that, and it's kind of a medical story. So I can't wait to hear what you doctors have to say about that as we proceed through the show. And we're going to roll into our first commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, I left one, you know? And I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade. And in a GMP certified facility, so you know you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where will I even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name.
Everyone's talking about it. Oh, and we are back, you guys. That's right. Coming up next, we're going to roll right into the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte, the man rocking the Northwestern gear today because he's all about that big old Northwest. Okay. It is getting ready to be football season. It is the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte.
It is about that season, man. Big ups to all the March Madness aficionados out there. Hope your brackets are not totally busted so far. Speaking of schools and kids, and though some counties do have different schedules, with some starting as early as March 10th and others extending into late March, most Florida high schools ended their annual spring break session exactly 1 week ago on March 21st. And fresh off a full week's rest and recovery, former Florida Representative Matt Gaetz,
yeah, my
is
God,
back at it like a Craftmatic, making a splash in cannabis news headlines, putting a fresh, positive spin on a failed Biden administration cannabis policy. That's right, y'all. Matt Gaetz, some might remember, was initially chosen as Donald Trump's attorney general nominee before withdrawing in disgrace after leaked findings of an investigation into his alleged transgressions with underage escorts went public. Gaetz returned in a wildly optimistic op-ed published by the Tampa Bay Times on Thursday, revealing that a brand new approach to reform was on the horizon under the current administration, praising the president's leadership in supporting a giant step forward for pro-pot constituents nationwide. And that new idea that they're coming up with, marijuana rescheduling to Schedule 3. The longtime advocate for marijuana policy change argued that rescheduling would ease research restrictions, remove tax burdens, and benefit patients and veterans. He praised the move as a step toward reform, though strangely at no point in the op-ed did Gaetz even talk about that the process was initiated by Joe Biden. And Kyle Yeager's take on the op-ed in Marijuana Moment, he quoted Gaetz saying that he has always believed that marijuana laws should be rooted in science, not stigma, citing his work to advance reform during his time in the Florida House and while in Congress. However, he seemed to miscategorize his contribution to the issue in a state legislature, claiming he introduced legislation at the time to legalize marijuana because, quote, I understood Our outdated federal policies were failing patients, veterans, and businesses. Yeager wrote that Gates did sponsor a limited medical cannabis bill, but not a full-out legalization measure. Not once. In Congress, he was one of the sole GOP votes to support a Democrat-led federal legalization bill, however. Here's the rest of what he had to say. For too long, cannabis has been classified alongside heroin and LSD, substances with no accepted medical use and a high potential for abuse, the former lawmaker said in the op-ed. This classification has severely hindered research, blocked access for patients, including millions of veterans, and burdened legitimate businesses with unnecessary regulations. Moving cannabis to Schedule 3 is a step in the right direction. It acknowledges its medical benefits, eases restrictions on scientific studies, and allows cannabis businesses to operate on a more level playing field by eliminating unfair tax burdens. If cannabis is not rescheduled, scientists will have to continue navigating unnecessary hurdles, such as obtaining special licenses to be able to conduct their research and having to source cannabis from a limited number of suppliers, which makes studies difficult to conduct. You got to respect the artistry with which some politicians, current and former, approach gaslighting. It is a gift. But uncertainty remains as Trump's current administration, including Gates' replacement, Attorney General Pam Bondi, and DEA nominee Terrence Cole, have clearly not supported this policy. So, if anything Gates had to say here ever comes true, it'd be a bipartisan surprise that I assume Jason Beck would spin his way into supporting too. Right, Jason? Descheduling.
That's cute.
Or rescheduling. Matt Gaetz says rescheduling, so you're behind it now, right?
No. That's cute. That's cute. That's cute. I knew you were gonna do that as soon as I saw this story actually last night. I was like, well, Rico's probably gonna pick this up and going to want to cover this.
So responses to the piece were predictably split. Industry advocates were chiming in on this, mostly hoping that Trump's backing could push reform forward. The hardcore Trump supporters were attempting to frame 47 as a stronger proponent of cannabis reform than Biden ever had been and ever will be. Me, on the other hand, I just see this bullshit for what it is. Another distraction and weak attempt to divert our attention away from RFK Jr. cutting 20,000 positions at HHS, 4 missing U.S. soldiers in Lithuania that Trump claims to know nothing about, and the leaked login and passwords of everyone involved in Signalgate, revealing that Pete Hegseth had a Russian email address tied to a burner phone with a Russian phone number. But yeah, we'll ignore the 67 days in shitstorm over here and totally entertain Matt Gaetz on rescheduling. It'll be awesome and totally different this time because MAGA. I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High 9 News. Happy Friday, y'all.
Happy Friday. Oh man, good old Matt.
Oh.
We'll go for it, Jenny.
I'm taking a deep breath. I mean, listen, I've said all I needed to say about rescheduling. The research barriers are the only fucking positive note on that. Otherwise, it's going to screw us. And it does not remove barriers to banking or tax burdens. We could still be taxed at a higher rate. And we can still have issues with banking because the banks do not still have to take us.
That's true. Very, very, very true, Jenny Beth. Very true. They're probably going to want to see a copy of your DEA license in order to be able to bank. That's what I would anticipate.
This time. The Republicans are doing it, and Trump is going to be behind it, so it's different, Jason.
That's not how it works, Rico. But that's a cute
rescheduling
spin.
Great again.
Here Rico goes.
Only descheduling could it be great again. Otherwise, it's going to be a total clusterfuck.
Hey, your boy's in the news at least. You know what I'm saying?
I know. I was happy. You know what I'm saying? His picture even made the thumbnail of today's episode. I was pretty excited about that.
What are your thoughts on this, doctors?
Oh boy.
Well, I've always been the fan of rescheduling. If you're speaking for the patient, banking has nothing to do with the patient. Rescheduling does. It improves the quality of product patients likely to have.
Do you really think it is going to improve the quality of the product, Dr. T? Do you really?
Yes.
You really? Dr.
Yes.
Mark's shaking his head no. He's saying no. Oh, man.
Hello?
Here we go.
Moving it to Schedule 3 is going to fail miserably because people are going to refuse to buy MSO produced mids at Walgreens, period. Right. The only thing that's going to win in Schedule 3 is the trap. The trap will continue winning. I think I'm a researcher at a college. This does not help me one bit. One bit. So the notion that this somehow frees up cannabis for research is a misconception and total bullshit. The thing that will free up research is descheduling the plant, removing it from the schedule. Look, we talked about it earlier in Dr. T's story. It's not dangerous, so it does not need to be controlled, okay? It should be removed from the Controlled Dangerous Substance Act, period. That's it.
You don't have to have trap weed to get something strong enough to do research on, Dr. Mark.
Well, research, it will improve research. Certainly.
It doesn't help me. It does, of course. In no way does this help me gain access. I still need to get a stupid Schedule 1 license. And even if it does move to Schedule 2, Dr. T,
Three.
I have to wait like for 6 months to get my research approved through some, IRB that doesn't give a shit about the plant and really can care less about whether or not I'm able to do my research. So I think what will free up research if the plant is freely available and you don't need some government registration to get swag weed from the University of Mississippi's farm down there. Should be able to do research on product that you can buy in your own jurisdiction. And I think if anything that's going to come out of this whole rescheduling, descheduling business, it's just going to be a lot of bantering back and forth. I think what we know is that the DEA doesn't want to change a damn thing, right? So they've been dragging their feet on this. It's just been basically a smoke and mirrors exercise in sophistry and bullshit. And the hubris amongst these people who think that somehow that this is going to be good, those are tools of the pharmaceutical industry, because what's going to happen is there is no cannabis facility today that's producing things that would basically fit under the FDA qualifications for producing a Schedule 3 substance. None. The only things that produce Schedule 3 substances are FDA-registered pharmaceutical companies. So this is a play for Big Pharma to come in and take over cannabis. Does that sound like a good idea to you folks?
Nope.
Go for it, Dr. T, and then we're going to move on.
Well, there are a lot of, it's not either reschedule or deschedule. It's deschedule I would prefer over reschedule. Absolutely. I don't know any cannabis advocate who wouldn't. But if it's reschedule or nothing, I'll take the incremental step toward reschedule. It does help me in doing clinical studies because I do get more access to products legally. If you're looking for an IRB, I suggest Western IRB. They're very cannabis friendly. And we've worked with them before. So all of the hurdles proposed have already been surmounted in terms of getting better studies for Schedule 3. It's possible. No issue here with me. And it's not an either or decision.
Interesting. All right. Well, I'm gonna roll into my story real quick today, or my first story for you guys. Hope you get ready for this. This was super interesting. I'm glad you kind of brought this up, Rico. Shout out to Matt Gates.
Reschedule or bust.
He's doing it. He's doing it for the clicks, bro. He's trying to help the movement. We're pushing for the deschedule train.
Gaslighting. So you agree with that? Yeah.
Bro, he's a master at gaslighting. I'm all about it. I'm a professional gaslighter too. Speaking of gaslighting, Minnesota could license hundreds of marijuana retailers cultivators in the coming months. That's right. The State of Office of Cannabis Management has received more than 3,500 cannabis business applications as it sends regulations to a judge for final approval, you guys. Minnesota has received more than 35 applications from prospective pot entrepreneurs in the first round of marijuana business licenses expected to be issued later this spring, according to the data released Wednesday by the State of the Office of Cannabis Management, better known as the OCM. In total, includes 1,444 social equity applications that remain active after a previous license lottery was canceled late last year. An additional 2,085 applications were received during a month-long window that closed on March 16th. That tally includes 297 social equity applications and 1,788 general applications for a range of available license types such as cannabis retailer, cultivator, manufacturer, etc., etc. That means as many as 2,100 applicants could be eligible to receive licenses that allow them to operate at least one retail marijuana store in the coming months, while 2,000 businesses could be permitted to cultivate cannabis in varying amounts. However, the universe of possible licenses could shrink significantly as the OCM reviews applications. Some applicants may not meet the minimum qualifications or could decide to withdraw from the process entirely. Qualified applicants seeking license types that are not limited in number, such as micro businesses, wholesaler, delivery services, and medical cannabis combination businesses, can proceed with the licensing process once their applications are approved by the OCM without entering a lottery. More than half of all the applicants are pursuing micro business licenses, one of two license types that allow the holder to cultivate, possess, and sell cannabis products, also known as a vertical integration or a relatively small scale. On a relatively small scale. About 200 social equity micro business applicants who qualified for a canceled license pre-approval lottery are currently working their way through the licensing process and could potentially open ahead of two new lotteries slated for May and June. The first lottery will be reserved for social equity applicants seeking license types that are capped in number by law, with the other open to general applicants. Social equity applicants who are not awarded a license in the first lottery will also be entered in the second, you guys. Social equity licenses are intended to help veterans, individuals who were harmed by cannabis and cannabis prohibition, and those living in areas of high poverty enter the state's fledgling cannabis industry. The pre-approval lottery was canceled last year after a handful of applicants sued the OCM, alleging they were unfairly denied entry. The pre-approval process was intended to allow social equity applicants to proceed with the work of setting up their businesses, as well as to permit some cultivators to begin planting in order to ensure a supply of cannabis was available when the market launches. Minnesota's cannabis attorney Jason Taranzak said the flood of micro-business applications could greatly improve the chances in the lotteries for applicants seeking capped license types, such as cultivator, manufacturer, and retailer licenses. For example, there are just 96 applicants seeking 50 available cannabis cultivation licenses and 83 contenders for 24 manufacturing licenses. In a quote, he says, "A lot of people, including a lot of my clients, pivoted to the micro business license because it's uncapped," Teresic said. "I think some of those people in the lottery now have better odds than I was anticipating a couple weeks ago," he says. Taranzak also says that he expects most micro business applicants only intend to open a retail store without cultivation or manufacturing of their own products, and that could lead to a glut of retailers with limited available product to sell, particularly in the Twin Cities, he states. In light of the decision of the cities of Minneapolis and St. Paul not to limit the number of dispensaries, I'm concerned that we may see an oversaturation of dispensaries in Twin Cities, he said. The OCM also announced this week that he has submitted a draft of regulations that will govern the state's legal marijuana market to an administrative law judge for review. The judge has 14 days to either approve the rules or approve them with changes or outright reject them. Once the rules are approved and published, the state register or the OCM can begin issuing cannabis businesses licenses. The draft regulations were revised after a 30-day public comment period earlier this year, and many of the rules address the minutia of how cannabis dispensaries should operate, such as requirements for product packaging, security plans, and how to dispose of waste material. However, some regulators drew criticism from business owners and advocates. Perhaps the biggest lightning rod was a 70% limit on THC potency for cannabis concentrates that appeared in a previous draft of the rules following the public comment period. That proposed limit was raised to 80% then. Gabriel Hansen, owner of Athens Township-based hemp extraction company Loon Lab Extracts, said he is encouraged the OCM raised the proposed potency limit, but he remains disappointed that any limit was included at all. In a quote says, "It's a shame that they didn't eliminate the rule completely," Hansen said. "I think it's only going to encourage the black market to thrive." Well, and of course, it's going to encourage more people to be lying about lab test results, and they're just going to give them an 80% rating for stuff that's tested at 90%. So that's ultimately what's going to happen. Minnesota is also in the process of negotiating cannabis compacts with 10 of 11 tribal nations in the state, and once finalized, the agreements could allow tribes to license up to 5 retail marijuana stores outside of reservations, according to a draft compact obtained by the Star Tribune. And the OCM interim director, Eric Tulabal, said he expects the first compact to be completed in the next month or so. 5 Minnesota tribes are currently operating legal marijuana businesses on tribal land, and Taransek said he is excited to see signs of progress toward opening the state's marijuana market nearly 2 years since the legislature voted to legalize cannabis for adult use. And in a quote says, "It appears that we actually will have a market launch in 2025, he said. "I'm certain a lot of people are eager to start visiting dispensaries and buying cannabis." Well, Minnesota, they didn't mention any beverages in this whole thing, Rico, and that's supposed to be their number one go-to, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
It's because beverages are already out.
Mm-hmm.
they already on the scene.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people were pushing back about saying Minnesota's going too slow. Like, I applaud their slow effort to try to get this thing right. They identified a few mishaps early with people trying to game the social equity system, and we'll just have to wait and see. I wish them the best of luck. Nobody's really gotten it right yet, so we'll see.
Jenny Beth, you want to talk on this?
I mean, the concentrate limit is absolutely ridiculous. Like, I agree, it's pretty stupid. It will definitely encourage people to lie about test results, but also to go buy, trap stuff, which is, I'm so for whatever else, but open blasting and BHO in an unregulated sense is not a safe thing, period, ever in the history of everdom.
That's true. That's true.
So pushing people back to blowing themselves up in their garages is not what I want to do. I think that consumers are going to get what they want, whether they can get it in a licensed fashion or not. So they need to be very aware of that when they're making these regulations. I don't enjoy the thought of a social equity lottery, and please don't get mad at me, veterans. I would think that there should be some kind of precedent set where there's a little bit of preference in a traditional licensing sense for veterans, because we do need to definitely show appreciation to the men and women who have fought for our country. But when I'm looking at social equity, I'm looking at people who are directly impacted by the prohibition of cannabis, right? This is like kind of our cannabis reparation. So did you go to jail? Not did your friend go to jail? Not did your cousin go to jail? Did you go to jail? And were you directly impacted? Like, I mean, fine, impact zones or something, but it's interesting.
We did get a super chat in here from the C Word, who says, "Having been ticketed for weed a couple of times, am I potentially able to apply for an equity license?"
I don't think that's like, I want to see, there should be like levels to this, right? Like,
yeah.
Not did you get in trouble because you had a joint in high school in your cup holder?
I got grounded.
Were you actively participating in the cannabis industry on an illicit level where you got in trouble, where what you would have done today would have been a legal form of commerce? That is what I think should be the standard, but that's just me personally. So,
yeah. Were you ever?
Justice reform is my thing.
Were you ever questioned by the grocery store clerk asking, "Why are you buying so many sandwich bags?"
Goodbye, Jason.
You never get questioned if you get them at Costco. Message.
Dr. T, Dr. Mark, you guys have anything you want to throw in on this?
Yeah, turkey bags, not sandwich bags, right?
Right.
Hey, so pounds.
Hey, depends on if you're a bust down or not, Dr. Mark. You know?
Yeah. Just
Well, the nice thing about the turkey bags, I think it absorbs the smell, right?
That doesn't absorb the smell. It's better at keeping the smell inside of the bag. But turkey bags are porous, and so that, you know what I mean, they're not a smell proof bag.
Yeah, definitely not smell proof. But then there were the cheap asses. Shout out to the cheap asses who used chicken bags that were really difficult to tie. They're too small guys.
Yeah, and they don't have a universal weight. Those are so stupid.
I know. Don't use chicken bags.
Yeah,
turkey legs are ham.
Yeah, I don't know
if you saw that on Twitter.
You guys are funny.
It's a lie.
Yeah, I bet. You have any thoughts on this, Dr. T?
No, turkey bags versus chicken bags. Is this call for a study? That
I think we should. Yeah. Yes. I mean, I'm not opposed to that.
Schedule for that.
Can we file for a federal grant?
Oh, that would be, possibly Doge would let that slide through, because you know what I mean.
It won't happen under schedule.
We'll say it's tied to SpaceX.
We'll just say we're going to keep the bags all tied up, Rico.
Yes, indeed.
All right.
These products were never intended for this use, just as parchment paper. And that reminds me of something I just wanted to mention to Jenny, is that, the great thing about flower rosin, or rosin in general, and just solventless techniques, is that there's other ways of making concentrates without jamming cans of butane down a PVC pipe that's got weed in it, right? So maybe the innovation in rosin, which is, all you need is a hair straightener and some parchment paper, you can make a dabbable product.
No, 100%. I agree with that. I do, though, I like butane extraction for things like separating cannabinoids and stuff like that. So I think that they need to be cognizant of that when they're looking at like patient formularies and stuff. But yeah, no, I completely agree.
Solventless.
It's super interesting because here I just happen to be visiting California. I'm not in the same room with Jason, unfortunately.
No, you're going to be coming by later today, though.
I'm going to try to make it down there, buddy. We'll chat after the episode. But so here in California, what I see clearly, we went to Woody Harrelson's spot in West Hollywood yesterday, is that rosin and solventless has really carved out a niche in the market. I think people really love rosin these days, right? A good solventless rosin can taste just as good as a BHO, Jenny.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. It's really funny. I've always run type 7 facilities, but I always judge solventless products. So it's like, I definitely appreciate the craft and what's happening when you're doing something that's truly just about technique. It's not, an SOP as much as it is actually knowing what you're doing and working the product well and not damaging things during the separation process. So I definitely appreciate, and I like where we've gone with solventless. And I wonder if it's because the barrier to entry is much lower.
And before we go to a commercial, I do want to include the fact that water is a solvent.
Oh, I'm so tired.
Oh, and we are back. Stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it. And YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highat9news.com. I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Did you get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that, they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi. And we are back, Rico. We are back.
All right,
now.
y'all. This highly recognized New England base, yet Southern California located organic chemistry expert always brings a little functional Friday heat when he is on the mic. So get your notepads ready for another study sesh with the professor, Dr. Mark Scialdone. What do you have for us today, Dr. Mark? Welcome to the beautiful blue California.
Yes.
Great to be here at Sherman Oaks. I'm staying with my son, Jake, and I'm going to try to get down to the crib later on today, Jason. So,
Yes, please, come on down.
yeah, so there's a whole bunch of traffic on the 405 between me and you, so we'll see if we can negate that, right?
As long as you have someone in the car with you, you can take the carpool lane.
Yeah, exactly. So my story today comes from MDPI, which is basically a chemistry journal called Molecules, and it's entitled Comparison of the Cannabinoid and Terpene Profiles in Commercial Cannabis from Natural and Artificial Cultivation. And Dr. T, this is a really interesting list of authors because not only are the folks at Huckleberry Farms in Garberville and Moonmate Farms in Garberville on this, but also it looks like the science was done at Columbia University, which is exactly the point I'm trying to make, which is that we should, as university and college researchers, be able to access locally grown stuff and not necessarily stuff from the NIDA farm down in Mississippi. So let me just read the abstract and we'll kind of discuss some of the results that these folks observed here. Interest in cultivating cannabis for medical and recreational purposes is increasing due to a dramatic shift in cannabis legislation worldwide. Therefore, a comprehensive understanding of the composition of the secondary metabolites. Let me just stop there. Secondary metabolites is a fancy word for the cannabinoids and terpenes, right, that cannabis produces. So cannabinoids, terpenes, and other things that are basically produced by the cannabis plant are referred to as the secondary metabolites. And they wanted to look at how the influence in different environmental conditions is of primary importance for both medical and recreational use of cannabis. So they compared the terpene and cannabinoid profiles using gas and liquid chromatography and mass spectrometry for commercial cannabis from genetically identical plants grown indoors under artificial light and grown in media, or outdoors growing in living soil by natural sunlight. So yes, I could see why you're interested in this, Jason, because you always have said that, indoor grown cannabis is superior to sun grown, but let's see what the data says. So by analyzing the cannabinoids, we found significant variations in the profile of cannabis for different growing environments. Overall, both cultivars there were significantly greater oxidized and degraded cannabinoids in the indoor and grown samples, right? That may not be intuitively obvious. You'd think maybe the outdoor grown samples would oxidize more than the indoor, but the indoor are basically showing more oxidized compounds in their metabolite profile. Moreover, the outdoor grown samples had significantly more unusual cannabinoids, such as the C4 and C6 THCA. That was a learning for me. I didn't realize that those were actually identified in cannabis. So that was a pretty significant finding, I think. There are also significant differences in the terpene profiles between indoor and outdoor grown cannabis. Probably also the levels of terpenes. I would imagine that outdoor sun-grown cannabis could basically have more fugitive loss of terpenes as opposed to indoor, but let's see what the data says. The outdoor samples had a greater preponderance of sesquiterpenes, including beta-caryophyllene, alpha-humulene, alpha-bergamentine, and alpha-guanine and germicine B relative to the indoor samples. Well, so sesquiterpenes have higher molecular weights, and the boiling point of compounds are determined basically or correlated with their molecular weight. So the larger the compound, the higher the boiling point. So what it makes sense here is that, yeah, those are more predominant in the outdoor varieties because, again, the outdoor are heating up during the day because they're underneath the sun, and then perhaps cooling down at night, which, again, the reason why the terpenes are in the plant to begin with is to attract pollinators, right? And humans, right? So if you go down and dig into their data, what you see is, you see very, very marked differences between the cannabinoid levels and terpene levels between what's grown indoor and what's grown outdoor. And it's interesting because I think they looked at the same strains. So you could see very, very different secondary metabolite profiles in the same strain. The oxidation is particularly of interest because, again, this is what creates CBN and things like CBNA. So these are basically not made by the plant, but they're made by a photo or air oxidation of the cannabinoids that are in the plant. So I think what was really remarkable here is that if you look at some of the differences between these two, you could see up to, a single percentage difference in, cannabinoid content. You could see almost double-digit percentages in terms of the terpenes content. So yeah, I don't think this says that outdoor grown cannabis is better or has better medical impact. What you clearly see here is that there is differences between the two. So if you take a single strain or a single cultivar, a single variety, there is a lot of variation that can happen, whether that's grown outdoors or whether it's grown indoors. Might have to do also with the nutrients that are applied. If you're growing indoors in rock wool versus indoors in soil versus outdoors in living soil, you just can get very, very big noticeable differences. So yeah, this is a paper from basically about 2.5 years ago. So it was very interesting to see this come out. And I don't know if there's been any other follow-up work from these folks, but really good to see a place like Columbia University, which is, these folks at the Department of Chemistry at Columbia had to figure out how to get these samples from Garberville, California, out to New York City, where Columbia is. So interesting to think about how that may or may not have happened, right? But yeah, Dr. T, again, this is that interaction between academic scientists and farms that should be able to happen without any government interference at all. And I'd like to see a lot more of this kind of thing happen because I think that certainly universities and colleges can provide some of the academic and fundamental understanding that can underpin these. So yeah, really interesting paper, Jason. Thanks for pointing it out.
Yes, sir. Most definitely, Dr. Mark. I found it super interesting when I was like, oh man, I was like, this is right up Dr. Mark's alley, and we really haven't covered something like this, and we're always talking about this. And you know, me personally, I've always stated that I do believe that indoor is far superior to outdoor, but I do believe that outdoor flower makes better concentrates. And so this paper just actually, to me, proves my point.
Right. Well, the other thing you have to think about too, that's kind of like the 800-pound gorilla in the room, is yield. So, you know, those farmers up in Garberville are growing plants the size of apple trees. I'm not sure you can grow that big of a
You're not going to grow that big of a plant, but at the same time, I don't believe that I don't believe that the size of that matters in this equation. I think that's a cute anecdote to go in there, and then, you know, different metric to throw in there, but I'm not buying that hype right there.
The size doesn't matter.
If you're limited solely on plant count, don't you want to maximize the yields from each individual plant?
Well,
and so if you're maximizing yields at an outdoor situation, it's just a completely different set of parameters than trying to do it indoors.
I agree with you on that, but at the same time, isn't it better to have something that you can sell for a higher price as opposed to a lower price that you know you're going to sell out of, instead of having a bunch just still sitting around that you're not going to make as much money on?
Absolutely. Yeah.
See? So there we go. That's why I say that, you guys. That's exactly why I say that. Jenny Beth, what do you have to say about this?
I mean, oh boy. I don't know, Jason. The data, it's data. You can't really argue with it, right?
You can't really argue with the data. That is so true. They should have told everyone on that on Star Trek.
Shout out to Tina Gordon at Moon Made Farms for this study. We've been following her for a while. She produces great plants. A woman-owned cultivator up north, and is a former drummer for the AC/DC band. So,
oh, nice. Very nice.
This study definitely highlights, for those who count on genetics, that it's not all about the genetics. The buck doesn't stop at your genetics. It also counts how you grow the plant, where you grow the plant. So you might have the genetics, but if you're not growing it in the right place, the right way, it doesn't really mean much.
Very true.
Very true. That does all affect the terpiness. I'm with you guys on that. And on that, we're gonna roll into our final commercial, and we are gonna be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, you know? But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you know you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where I'm even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
Collecting Social Security, so that means I'm
all
a
right,
senior
well,
citizen.
easy. We don't want to say that on camera. We are back, you guys. Yeah, and we are gonna roll right on into Miss Jenny Beth Dills. She's the founder of Kind Cannabis, where it can help you keep your business on track, whether you're on BioTrack or MetTrack. That's right. She's also the founder of Justice Served, a 501c3 that helps justice impaired individuals get their lives back on track as well. Speaking from the track, it is none other than Miss Jenny Beth Dills. You there, Jenny? Did your internet just fail you? Hello? Are you on mute, Jenny? Jenny Beth. Where did she go? Jenny Beth has disappeared. Okay, well, all right. Well, I'm gonna read. I guess I'm gonna pull up what her story was gonna be. Oh, there she is. You with us, Jenny?
ICE is freaking out. All right.
Okay,
Big reform could be coming to Hawaii's medical marijuana program, and that includes a crackdown on illegal CBD shops. Lawmakers are shifting their focus away from legalizing recreational cannabis and towards strengthening the state's 25-year-old medical system. Senator Jarrett Kekahole, who chairs Consumer Protection, says the goal is to make it easier for patients to access medical cannabis legally and keep them out of the black market. Senator Kekahole said these people have to go somewhere, and we don't want them going to organized crime for their medical conditions. One key proposal is letting medical professionals decide if cannabis could help a patient rather than sticking to a limited list of qualifying conditions, something I'm sure Dr. TallyRand appreciates. That could open the door for patients with anxiety, insomnia, and depression to qualify for treatment. More dispensaries could be added in rural areas, and for the first time, licensed growers would be allowed to sell directly to dispensaries, a move supporters say would improve quality and supply. There's also a push to bring back the caregiver model for patients who want to grow their own, but not everyone agrees on how far that should go. At the same time, new enforcement powers would take unlicensed CBD shops, allowing the state to seize illegal products and shut down non-compliant businesses. Senator Joy San Bonaventura, it's not only about seizing and fining, it's about being able to go after the establishments themselves. But some advocates warn too much regulation could drive patients away from the legal system. Dr. Clifton Otto, if you start adding on all these punitive measures, patients are going to think it's not worth the effort, and they'll go back underground. The Senate's proposals outlined in House Bills 302 and 1482 still need to clear several key committees before heading back to the House. Despite the late session timing, leaders say there's broad agreement on improving access and cracking down on illegal operations. So, all in all, I think this is a good story. I think giving the power and the autonomy to prescribe and decide what's best for your patient back to the doctors is a huge deal. I think that, there's been a very long-standing, robust medical system in Hawaii, and I think that allowing the Hawaiian people to be their own caregivers and remain with that control is a huge thing. I also think allowing cultivators to sell directly to retailers would be a huge move as well. So I'm going to throw it back to you guys. I'm sure I'll have some more to add in at some point, but let's keep this train rolling.
I agree with you, Jenny Beth. I think this is great news right here.
Of course you do. I'm always right.
I don't know about all that, but yeah, sure. Yeah, I could think of a number of examples where you're not right, but I'm not going to get into that on the show today. I mean, Dr. T and Dr. Mark, I mean, giving it back to the patients and to the doctors as far as letting them be the determining factor, isn't that the way to go in your guys' opinion?
Absolutely. What had they done? Had they restricted it so that patients couldn't get access to certain products?
Yeah, they had. So they were restricting to the conditions, the applicable conditions. Now they're saying that doctors have autonomy to prescribe for any condition they think that cannabis might be a good fit for.
Yeah, I mean, cannabis, the endocannabinoid system is a broad system. It hits nerve cells, which are everywhere in your body. It hits immune cells, which are everywhere in your body. So it really interacts with every organ system in your body and really affects pain, mood, sleep, and appetite. Pretty basic conditions. So to restrict the use of cannabis is tough because it pretty much there may not be a diagnosis that it doesn't help.
Right.
Yep. I mean, and so this is kind of more just how Dennis authored 215 to make sure that doctors had the freedom to write a recommendation for anything that alleviates pain and suffering. And it sounds like Hawaii is now taking that approach, and so I think that's fantastic news.
Oh, that was Dr. Todd Vickeria.
That's fair. Good point. Yeah. Good. Yes. Good point. Good point.
Language.
Yeah. That's.
We got to give him credit.
Yeah. Fair enough. That is a good point. Dr. T, not mad at that. Dr. Mark, you have any thoughts on this?
I totally agree with Dr. T here. I mean, the endocannabinoid system in our body is our body's own pharmaceutical company. It's the regulatory system that basically regulates all other systems in the body, including musculoskeletal, circulatory, the nervous system. Like Dr. T points out, the CB2 receptors are predominantly in our peripheral sort of immune system. These are very important, chemical messaging systems and hormones that are in our body that basically govern, the mood we're in, whether we're happy, hungry, tired, horny. I mean, all those things is regulated by, this system. So yeah, it wouldn't make sense to exclude anything that could somehow, be benefited from cannabis use. We know that, like, unlike the synthetic cannabinoids, which can cause all kinds of problems, that the cannabinoids in the cannabis plant, namely THC, CBC, and CBD, don't have super potent affinity for the receptors. So we know that THC itself is only a partial agonist, as opposed to the spice compounds, which are full-on agonists, which can take patient into a very, very dark place. So I think, cannabis is safe. We've talked about it earlier in earlier stories. So I think it should be widely prescribed for anything that it can benefit in terms of a patient's well-being or medical condition.
Dr. Mark, would you say that Jason Beck is a partial agonist or a full-on agonist?
He's a full-on inverse antagonist.
Yes, yes. Without a doubt, you guys. I am about that life. I am here for that all the way, all day, every day.
I think that's what we love about you so much, Jason.
Hey, thank you so much, Dr. Mark. I super appreciate that. Without a doubt. Well, you guys, I did promise. I promised the doctors a story today that involved the safety of cannabis and senior citizens. You guys. So doctors, as promised, I can't wait for you guys to hear about this, because this is going to blow your minds. Oh man, I'm so excited. Food asphyxiation is way more dangerous than cannabis, you guys. That's right. Food asphyxiation is in the news again. In the U.S. alone, approximately 5,000 to 5,500 people die from choking on food or other objects annually. Factors like living alone, having dentures, difficulty swallowing, and certain foods like bananas, marshmallows, and gelatinous candies, that'd be gummies, can increase the risk of choking. These numbers highlight the persistent danger of food asphyxiation and the need for increased awareness and prevention measures. And yet it is rarely mentioned in the media or congressional reviews. But food asphyxiation is way more dangerous than cannabis, you guys. That's right. Food asphyxiation, commonly known as choking, claims a significant number of lives each year. The elderly population is most at risk, with 90% of food-related choking deaths in 2022 occurring in individuals over 50 years old. This statistic underscores the importance of proper care and attention for older adults during mealtimes. These numbers highlight the persistent danger of food asphyxiation and the need for increased awareness and prevention measures. In contrast, deaths directly attributed to marijuana overdose are extremely rare, and there is no documented case of a fatal overdose from natural marijuana alone. This stark difference in mortality rates between food asphyxiation and marijuana use is noteworthy. The disparity between food asphyxiation and marijuana overdose deaths is striking. While hundreds die each year from choking on food, marijuana overdose fatalities are virtually non-existent when considered considering natural marijuana use. These findings suggest public health efforts might be disappropriately focused on substances with lower mortality rates while overlooking more common dangers like food asphyxiation. Increased education on proper eating habits, especially for at-risk populations like the elderly, could potentially save more lives than efforts to prevent marijuana overdoses, you guys. To prevent choking, listen to your mom's advice. Eat slowly and thoroughly. Cut your food into bite-sized pieces and don't talk with your mouth full. And be mindful of food which may have small pieces or tiny bones, you guys. Well, I can't wait to hear what you guys got to say about this, Dr. T.
Wait, who wrote this study? Who did this study?
I got to pull that up. That's gonna take a second, but I can pull it up for you.
Some kind of yeah.
I
mean, absolutely. Cannabis is a very safe product. It's not very dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
There are things that we do every day that are more dangerous, like drinking alcohol,
mm-hmm.
like driving a car, like crossing the street.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some really basic things are more dangerous, and having a meal clearly is more dangerous than using cannabis. So you wonder, why we make such a big deal out of cannabis. We've got this fear of THC. I mean, I've got my theories.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a way to suppress the labor class, but we won't get into that right
Go for it
now. But, right.
I mean, you can't let grandma choke on that Werther's Original. You got to be careful, you guys. Like, this is silly, Jason. Who did the study?
It doesn't say in the article who did the study. It doesn't say.
It was done as some 8th graders.
I'll say this. This study is more significant than the study that caused people to switch to paper straws. Is way more significant.
Oh, I hate paper straws. They
Just saying.
They finish before the drink does,
Exactly.
Are people dying from?
No, but the turtles apparently were dying from the plastic straws, which caused the massive shift in public policy, which was totally ridiculous and dumb in the first place. But
well, if you ever show up on a nice beach and it's littered with plastic, then it turns, you might be a fan of that.
That's the thing, though, Dr. T. When you show up at a nice beach, people clean those things because that's what makes it a nice beach.
Well, I guess we have different definitions. I like the secluded, hardly anybody been there beaches.
Oh, you like the ones you have to explore to get to. You got to climb a whole bunch of rocks and mountains, and all of a sudden, you know what I mean?
I'm an old surfer, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So
you should come down here to Huntington Beach sometime. This great surfing every day of the year over here.
Surf City, USA.
It's great surfing there. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
You have to come down. You know what I mean? I found out. I was doing some research, and I found out here in Huntington Beach that when they built the pier, it was actually designed to where it actually makes the waves on both sides of the pier actually more suitable for surfers, which is one of the reasons that they call it Surftown, USA.
Yeah, and there's debate among the community about man-made surf spots versus natural surf.
Mm-hmm. Well, this man-made surf spot is a lot easier to access than than the other ones, Dr. T. So you know what I mean?
That's part of the fun.
Exactly. But you don't got to worry about a slip and fall.
Right.
Jumping on your Werther's on the way down.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Or, you know what I'm saying? Or at the same time, if you're choking on something, I'm sure there's going to be someone that'll give you the Heimlich maneuver that'll know that they'll be able to save your life.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And speaking on this story, I do encourage everyone to make sure that they do learn the Heimlich maneuver. That does save a number of lives when people are choking on food or choking on whatever's in their mouth or whatnot. And so I do encourage everyone to learn that. It's a super easy thing to learn, and even. I think everyone, especially if you live alone and you are a senior, you should learn how to do it because it is something that you can do with the purpose of a chair as well, and administer it on yourself if you happen to be home alone during the time of a tragic accident like this.
Jason, have you ever had to throw yourself over the couch because you were choking?
No.
Okay, I'm just asking.
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm fine with.
Well, thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Aim High Hemp Distribution and Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. And thank you to CloudMedia.Partners, Anthony out there in the metaverse holding it down. And thank you. Yes, and thank you all for... Oh, also, too, I do want to give a special shout-out to my good friend, Mr. Michael Wayans. It is his birthday today, and so we do want to wish you a very, very happy birthday, Mike. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show. And